In episode 101, we asked, why Net Lease? Today we're answering, what is it? By the end of this episode, you'll be able to explain what is Net Lease clearly, simply, and confidently. Picture this. A lease drops on your desk. 40 pages of fine print, covenants, clauses, all kinds of stuff that leaves you, well, overwhelmed. At first glance, it looks like every other property agreement, but a few pages in, you realize something's different. This isn't an apartment lease. It's not a shopping center lease. It's something else entirely. In most real estate, apartments, office, shopping centers, the landlord manages a lot. All the property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. So that basically means you, the landlord, have a lot of responsibilities, like hiring managers, handling insurance, tracking taxes, keeping reserves for roof repairs. This is not mailbox money. This is not passive. It's like juggling spinning plates. Which one will fall first? And when it does, your cash flow kind of looks like Swiss cheese. Now here's where Net Lease flips the model. It's a different ballgame, and quite a bit simpler for Mr. Landlord. There are two main types, a land and building lease, and simply a ground lease. With the first, you own both building and land, and with a ground lease, well, just the land. The tenant owns the building. The beauty though, both of you shift all the OpEx, the taxes, insurance, maintenance, to the tenant. The difference, it's like leasing a car. At a double net lease, you're still on the hook for major repairs. And a triple net lease, even those belong to the driver.
Now, let's look at McDonald's, arguably the most iconic American restaurant. Started in 1955, Ray Kroc opened the first franchise right outside Chicago. Ever since, McDonald's has built its empire, not just on burgers and fries, but real estate. When McDonald's opens a new restaurant, they almost always use a ground lease. They rent the land, but build and own the restaurant themselves. It's like building a castle on rented ground. McDonald's pours millions into their stores, but the landlord still owns the dirt beneath it. And a typical McDonald's ground lease has 15 to 20 years of term, 10% rent increases every 5 years, and structured as a triple net lease. So the landlord owns the land, McDonald's builds the restaurant, pays the bills, and the landlord collects stable, growing rent. It's a very different lease structure for multifamily. And to be honest, it's a boring model, but boring is beautiful.
Hey, it's me, your insider. I have a tip that I want to share, and it rarely gets talked about, and frankly is overlooked by most investors. The tenant entity on your lease matters. I know, it's a no-brainer, but trust me, I've seen this time and time again get screwed up and can make all the difference. I'm talking millions of dollars. I've seen this firsthand, so don't screw it up. Pay attention. For example, with CVS, the lease usually has the big guy, the parent, CVS Corporation, directly on the hook. This is mailbox money, passive income, what we like to see. We want the parent, but this won't always be the case, and that's fine. Exceptions work. For example, McDonald's, well, that's mailbox money too. But the leases are almost never signed by McDonald's Corp. Instead, a subsidiary, granted, a very large one. But did you know that? Each of these subs have different risk profiles and are mostly overlooked by investors. In simple terms, think of the tenant entity like co-signing a loan. Would you rather have your rich uncle or the entire family where the well never runs dry? I'm good with both. I mean, McDonald's is massive, and they are investing millions of their own dollars on building on your land. That means no money out of your pocket and all the benefits of their investment to you. But it's a reminder, the tenant entity is one of the most important lines in the lease. So, like I said, don't screw it up.
So let's break it down. A McDonald's lease. Not just what it is, but why it matters. First, lease term. Usually 15 to 20 years. That's 2 decades of consistent cash flow. A longer lease means fewer surprises, and it usually commands a premium price. Next, escalations. Typically 10% bumps every 5 years. These are the built-in raises. With them, your income grows automatically. No need to renegotiate. But with landlord responsibilities, well, there are all kinds of leases. We're primarily talking about absolute triple net leases, and this means passive income. This is what makes Net Lease so powerful. Let's keep going, but don't worry. We won't go through all 40 pages, just the highlights and the most important items. Once you know these items, you'll be dangerous. For example, the defined party or name on the lease. It's quite important, as we've learned. In this case, the tenant name is McDonald's USA LLC. The names on the lease matter. They're a form of insurance, and the bigger, the better. But here is one that gets a bit tricky. Tenant renewal options. For example, McDonald's usually has multiple 5-year extensions, often stretching control to 40 plus years. Think this is good? Well, think again. Yes, of course we want McDonald's to stay, but they get all the benefit with their option. There's no upside to the landlord, only downside if a tenant walks. Tenants love options. With landlords, it's mixed. Great to see the desire to stay, but there's no commitment, and the landlord could be locking in very low rents 40 years out.
McDonald's controls the property. The landlord enjoys stable rent. And even if they leave, you keep the improvements. That's why these leases are prized. But here's the bigger picture. McDonald's has about 13,000 US locations, and over 40% are ground leased or owned by a third party. That's some pretty incredible scale. It is why many investors see ground leases as bond alternatives. The cash flow is contractual, but backed by hard real estate. And with the brand strength and financials of McDonald's, these leases are so valuable.
So, what is a net lease? It's simply a structure, but that structure is what's powerful and simple and beautiful. It's a structure that works for the landlord and for the tenant. The tenant is fine taking on these responsibilities. I mean, they're the ones running the business. So it kind of makes sense to have them maintain the property. A tenant is happy, landlord is happy, and it builds stability into the lease. Another way to think about it, net lease is the bondable portion of real estate. Just like a bond requires payments to investors, a net lease requires rent to landlords. The difference? If a bond defaults, you're left with paper for the fireplace. If the net lease defaults, you still own the land and the building. That's the difference maker, and why net lease has become one of the most trusted income strategies in the entire world. If you want more, subscribe. Follow along. This is Mailbox Money, and I'm that lease guy turning stress into sunsets, one lease at a time.